So mothers need to learn that that's part of their son's life, is building a solid emotional life and feeling secure and good about it. Then as boys get older, it's all about dad. Because I often say a boy needs to learn how to be a man by watching a good man.
Meg, welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much. I love seeing you. I love being here. It's always so uplifting and encouraging.
Well, it's fun.
So it is fun.
You know, you have been a pediatrician for about 30 years, I think you mentioned to me. 30 years of observing young people, and some of these patients you've known for a long time, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the culture, when you first became a pediatrician to now, do you see a drastic change in the environment, just generally?
Oh, when I came out of medical school, really it was the psychiatrists who took care of kids with anxiety and depression. Pediatricians didn't have to know that much about it. That is completely shifted because now psychiatrists are so full with taking care of the kids who are schizophrenic, manic depression, that a lot of it is spilled into the laps of pediatricians. So we have learned how to take care of anxiety and depression because it's such a big part of our work. That's huge. And a lot of pediatricians don't know what to do because it takes a lot of time and energy and training to learn how to take care of kids with depression and anxiety. So on many levels, it's really changed.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You wrote this book probably 10 years ago now, Boys Should Be Boys, 7 Secrets to Raising Healthy Sons. I would think you're saying now this is even more intense.
Yeah.
And speak to that environment with boys that I led with in terms of how we as a culture are underserving boys and not allowing them to be boys.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote this book because doing my research for my book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, I realized how under siege men are. Adult men, and how masculinity had taken on this. In the public, it connoted oppression, people being mean. From a woman's standpoint, women sort of, taught this. And I thought, wow, if this is happening to men, what's happening to boys? And that's what really prompted me writing the Boy Should Be Boy book, because I saw this emergence of the degradation of masculinity and turning masculinity into an ugly, dirty word. And I think that comes out of a lot of the women's movement, from way back. But I really did it, and I really believe it's more pertinent now than ever, because in the book I say, being boy is good, male is good, masculinity is good, and guess what? It's very different from womanhood and femininity. And I think that many people feel if you fuse the two, you can find this sort of no man's land where you can be a little of this and a little of that, but you can't.
It's so true. And I'm thinking about the messaging that occurs toward boys that in somehow just because you're a boy, you're bad.
Exactly.
And we may not even notice that, even as parents, but how the schools disparage that. What is happening in the culture, I think in both parts, one that we have to be equal, and we have to, as teachers and people engaged with young people, we have to communicate that. And then secondly, this idea that boys are worse than girls. And rather than both are beautiful, both are great, both are created in God's image. But who's winning with that?
Well, we say everybody has to be equal, but we don't really mean it. We want women to be more powerful than men. And this is what's really emerged. And this is where the denigration of masculinity, the idea of masculinity, manhood has come from. And I've seen it, all along since the late 70s and into the 80s, the emergence of women's power. Women don't want to be equal to men. They want to be better and they want to pound. And it's too bad the idea that you can champion both a boy and a girl or a man and woman side by side. They don't believe that's true. One has to win or the other has to win. If you look in early elementary schools, a lot of the school teachers are women. And when they come into a classroom and they've been taught via subconsciously, television, radio, media, and so forth, that masculinity is not a good thing, that boys are kind of out of control. They need to be medicated because they're just too bouncing. They don't color in the lines. You've got a bunch of young women who are in early elementary and elementary schools. And so there's this natural undergirding bias against boys that begins that early.
Huh. Well, this is a comedic example of that. But, when you're at Christmas time, you're watching The Christmas Story. And so who's out at the flagpole sticking their tongue on the flagpole? It's not a bunch of girls. It's the boys.
It's the boys.
The double dog dare you type.
Exactly.
That is an elementary school playground.
Exactly.
And that's what I remember.
Right.
And the point is, you can't, it's unhealthy to work against that.
Right.
And to tell boys not to be daring, not to be adventuresome. It is kind of that God-given instinct of what we are as male.
It is
to go to the edge, to be the pioneer. It doesn't preclude girls from doing things like that. But man, don't make us girls.
Well, and that's the big rub, is that I believe we're at a time where we don't really want two sexes. We want neutrality. We want sameness. And we don't want equality, we want sameness. And in order to do that, we have to emasculate men and boys. And I think that, it's interesting you talk about risk, taking a risk. We're also a very risk-averse society.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We don't want anybody to be harmed. Parents, young parents, they don't want their kids vaccinated. They don't want them this. They don't want them on antibiotics. Some young parents will say, I don't want my parents to hold my baby because for the first 3 months because of this and this and this. We don't want anybody taking a risk. And if there's anything inherent to masculinity, it's risk-taking. It's very interesting, too, because we can articulate the differences between men and women, boys and girls. But think about this. You ask any kid if his mom was different from his dad, there's no question.
Absolutely.
You were a little more afraid of your dad. I was. You also look, I can't tell you the number of single mothers I see who are afraid of their teenage boys. Because teenage boys are angry who don't have a dad around, and they will go at their mother. If you think about, too, what was it in Louisiana a number of years ago where that school, they had a lot of violence in the school. And these kids were out of control. These teenage boys were out of control. And 40 men in the area said, we're done with this. We're going to appoint one dad to go in the school every day and just walk the halls. And so one man, I think they're African Americans, walked in the halls, and within 2 weeks, the violence went away.
Yeah.
Masculinity it's a presence, it's a power, it's a spirit, if you will, in a very positive way that's very different from the feminine spirit. And it's so powerful, it's hard to articulate it. And yet everybody knows it's there, but we're in a culture that wants to neutralize masculinity and then femininity as well.
Let's get to the book content. You list 7 secrets. I want to get into that. So why don't you just list them, and then we'll come back and ask some questions about each one.
You bet. Know how to encourage your son. Understand what your boys need. Their needs are different from girls. Recognize that boys were made for the outdoors, sticks and trees and rocks. Remember that boys need rules. Acknowledge that virtue is not just for girls. Learn how to teach your son about the big questions in life. And remember that the most important person in your son's life is you. Now, those sound very basic, but when you really drill down, a lot of parents, when it comes to boys, particularly mothers, how do I encourage my son? What do I say? I don't want to step on toes. So they sound basic, but when you actually try to live them out, it can be a little trickier.
No, that's good. Let's go to the first one and unpack that a little bit. That's knowing how to encourage their sons. You're not talking about false praise.
No.
Because we sniff that out pretty quick, too. Everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah.
That ain't true. And sorry for the grammar there, but it's on purpose. But the idea that it's not false praise that sons need, but what do they need in that area of lifting up?
Well, again, fundamentally, parents need to understand your boy is not your daughter. So if you're going to encourage your son in the correct way, in a biblical way, you encourage his masculinity.
What does that sound like? Give me an
It
example.
sounds like, go outside and find something to do and go make a fort. Go figure out what to do. Take a risk. Climb the tree. Make snowballs. Make an ice fort. If you fall off the top of it, it's okay. To really encourage your kids to live and to. I always say every playground at school should have a couple of big trees in it. You'd never find a tree in a playground at school because they don't want the boys to fall out and hurt themselves.
Right.
Or they don't want the boys to be able to climb the top of the tree and the girls can't.
They've been changing a lot of the equipment at schools near
Yes.
us. They've been making it safe. Oh, the slides are gone. The metal slides are
Everything's
gone.
flat.
Everything. There's all the plastic chips at the bottom now. So when you fall, you hit something
So
soft.
if you're going to encourage your son to walk in a masculine way, you encourage him to use his physical and emotional strength. And that means climbing and running and, yes, hitting, maybe not other people, but encourage that physical strength, because the bottom line is men are stronger than women.
I mean, again, Meg, some people are going to be hearing this and going, "Oh my gosh, that's so archaic.
Well,
they are so behind the times." But and it's fine, because this is what we all agree on. In terms of the Christian ethos to this, men will be men. We need Davids. We need the little boy Davids.
We do.
In the playgrounds.
Exactly. Who are not afraid.
Yeah, meaning I'll slay the giant. Give it to me.
I will get hurt. I don't mind being wounded. I don't even mind my feelings being hurt and a girl calling me something. And for those who say that men aren't stronger than women, I would ask any woman out there, if you're in downtown Chicago at 1 a.m, do you feel differently walking on a dark street alone or with a 6'2" husband? There's no question. And that's what God did with us.
Yeah.
He created us so differently. And that's what freedom really is. Having the freedom to embody different parts of your character. The feminine part of your character with its soft and tender and wants to be very patient and kind. But there's also a different part of your feminine character, which means you can be very physically strong and capable. My niece is an elite athlete from the University of Michigan. She's very kind and sweet. And the freedom for the male is that I can be fully masculine and I can capitalize on my physical strengths, my tendency to want to take a risk, to want to drive fast, even though, it's not a smart thing. But I can embrace that. But I can also embrace another side of me that loves opera, that wants to, take care of my wife, when she's really sick, the tenderness. And that's the beauty of the complexity of the human spirit and the human person. And I think that the damage we do with boys in particular is we try to put them in a lane and we say, this is your lane, and it cannot include traditionally masculine character qualities because we don't like them.
Right. Right now, I'm thinking of the Good Samaritan things that are happening in the culture. And not long ago, we had that case in New York where that man took action against somebody who was threatening the lives of those on the subway. And of course, there's been the person that was set on fire. The context for my question is this: when the culture diminishes masculinity, you have fewer people willing to step up to right injustices because the cost becomes too high.
We are less safe.
But it is evidence of exactly what you're talking about. When we don't encourage good men to take charge, to step up, to engage when there's danger, you're going to have a lot of just passerbys.
We're really willing to shred truth and get rid of truth in order to create a narrative we want. It fits our feelings. Men don't need to be strong. We don't need them to help us on a subway because they're really not any different from us, which means then if somebody steps up to get rid of a guy who's harming you, that's a bad thing. How twisted is that?
Yeah, just to control the situation.
Just to control the narrative that masculinity is a bad thing, therefore it can't be exercised even if someone's life is at risk. That is so twisted.
Yeah. Listen, let's move to number 2. Secret number 2 is understanding what our boys need.
Yeah.
Now, explain that. What does that mean, knowing what they need?
Well, they need a lot because they're very complicated people, just like women are complicated people. First of all, the discouragement to many dads out there with a 4 or 5-year-old kid who falls down in the playground and starts to cry, and the dad comes up and just said, just, don't act like a girl. Just, you don't need to cry. Just sort of suck it up. Men should not behave like this. And then the mother comes in and criticizes the dad. Boys are emotional creatures. Boys, in large part, get their emotional language from their mothers, in general. Now, there's some dads who teach it to their sons. And by that, I mean, before a child is age 7, they learn cues from their mom about, is it okay to cry? I feel like I want to cry, but dad's looking at me like I'm a bad person if I do. No, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel. It's okay to, feel very compassionate. So mothers need to learn that that's part of their son's life, is building a solid emotional life and feeling secure and good about it. Then as boys get older, it's all about dad. Because I often say a boy needs to learn how to be a man by watching a good man. He needs to see a man in action. Boys watch their fathers. They don't watch their mothers when they're 13 or 15. That's a little creepy. If you're 13 and you're watching your mother, they want, how does a guy act? How does they have that instinct to want to be masculine.
Yeah.
And dad pulls that out of them. Mothers don't pull that out of them. We don't know how. And we're taught, just like everybody else is, that masculinity is oppressive to the woman's spirit or to her womanhood. So we just sort of stand there silent. We don't know how to encourage our boys to go out and take risks. We don't want to. We don't want our boys hurt. So moms need to move out of the way, and it's got all about dad in the teen years. Teach your son how to be a man who treats women well, who is not threatened by women, who is not threatened by being a strong man and exercising his ability to do well what his female counterpart can't, and to be okay with that.
Hey, just a quick pause here. As this year wraps up, we want to thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying this episode, and I'm so glad you're connecting with the ministry and being encouraged by our great content. Would you help us to keep going so we can invest in the lives of other families? You can do that in several ways. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And then help us deliver the hope and joy of Christ by supporting us financially with a one-time gift, or donate monthly and become a Friends of Focus on the Family member. Please don't wait. Join what God is doing for families now. Use the link below or the QR code here. Thanks so much for joining us in the mission. Now, back to the show. Yeah, Meg, our experience with our oldest particularly, I mean, he was not a compliant child. And so he had his decisions and he knew where he wanted to go, I mean, pretty much right out of the womb, I'd say. And Trent was just that strong-minded. But I remember specifically a time when he was no longer at the house. He had moved out and was going to college. But he came over for dinner, had a great meal that Jean had prepared, and he sent a text and said, "Mom, thank you so much for taking the time to make that great meal tonight." And I remember looking at it. Jean came and showed it to me, and I went, "Who is that?" But it was a moment that his maturity caught up. And I mean, it's rare that he doesn't send a note like that to Jean after coming over for dinner now. Very consistent and very mature, very thankful. And I think it's just encouragement to parents to allow their boys' brain to catch up. Like the male brain matures like at 25 is what the research is showing. So you may need a little more grace for some boys because they may not always get it. But speak to that idea for the parent to be looking outward, because we're so in the moment. Yeah. But, when that child is 22, 23, 24, that boy, you're going to see some significant changes, or you should, in attitude.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I've had parents of a 15, 14-year-old boy come in and say, "He won't study. He won't do anything. He's so unmotivated. And I said, his story isn't written. And the way he is at 14 is not going to be the way he is at 15. And I often tell parents, your job as a parent, when your child is 2 or 3 or 5, is to raise a great 25-year-old. So here's the good news and the bad news. If your child is acting lazy at 15 and he doesn't want to be motivated, which is really common for boys, at 15.
Typical.
Here's the good news. You have 10 more years to help him get it right. And so you're absolutely right. Maturity, physical maturity, cognitive maturity, emotional maturity, those are critical. That's a critical 10-year period.
Yeah.
So to really encourage parents, whatever antics your son is up to at 15 or not up to, it's going to be completely different. You can have it. I remember my son went through a period, he just really didn't want to talk to me. It just broke my heart. What was I doing? I couldn't, I tried to talk to him on emotionally a deeper level, and he didn't want to do that. He just didn't want to do it, but I had to convince him that he really should, because I'm his mother and I'm tender. And he pushed away, and my feelings were so hurt. Then I realized he's a boy. Let him go. That's a whole show unto itself.
Ooh, yeah.
Let him go, because he'll circle back around,
yeah,
and then he'll write the notes. And for my son, it was sending tulips.
Oh, my. Yeah, and all the
Never
moms,
got him from my daughters.
all the moms began to cry.
But he didn't do it until he was into his 20s.
Yeah.
He wouldn't talk to me at 15, sending tulips at 25.
But I think, Meg, the difficulty with that, I think particularly for moms, it is hard to think out 7 years, 10 years. Because the emotions are right here in front of you. It's so tangible. And you don't think this caveman is ever going to get, mature. Like, how many times have you told him to say please and thank you? And it's still not working, and they're 15. And, you get in this moment where you can't imagine them being smarter, better, more thoughtful at 23, 24.
Well, and and a mother panics, and dads probably too. If they're not doing it, and I've had him for 15 years under my roof, if he doesn't get it now, he's never going to get it. That's not true. Your son knows what you want. He knows you want him to say please and thank you, but for some reason that has nothing to do with you, he's just not ready to do it. Let him be. And so I really want to encourage parents, you have to think of the long game. At 15, at 10, even at 18, his story isn't written. And I've been doing this long enough. I've worked with a whole generation of parents now, and now I'm seeing their kids. So I really can say this with a lot of honesty and sincerity. Let him be. His story isn't written at 15.
Yeah, and then, then hang on. It'll get better. Trust us. But this idea that there have been bad men.
Oh,
we can't be naive about this. There is a certain negative expression of masculinity where it's power, often it's sexual abuse or physical abuse, because we are physically stronger. We can dominate in that way. We can intimidate. So those things are all true, but it's kind of like anything where if 5% are horrible, and that may be quite high, but whatever small percentage are terrible, then it gets applied to everybody. And that's not the case. I mean, again, if you have 95, 97% of men are good people that want to live life well and protect and provide and do those things that we believe in, that's a good thing. But don't paint us with the broad stroke of that other 3 to 5% that may be misbehaving.
Well, and that's been a huge problem, is that culturally, because women have dominated the narrative about who men are, and it's primarily been negative. We won't put up with this. We won't put, the Me Too movement. We're not going to put up with the sexual abuse and so forth. Okay, that's all good. But when there's no positive to balance it, it's like all men have been thrown into the same pot. You're all potentially sexual abusers. So I have to treat you as though you're very dangerous. Because the narrative for women has been rewritten by feminists. And now we're sort of trying to settle it out. It's like, wait a minute, we really do want to be home with our kids. Wait a minute, we really do want to do this. That hasn't happened with men. The only people trying to redefine masculinity have been women. And what they're trying to do is say, no, we want to sort of neuter you a little bit. We want you nice. We want you quiet. We want you kind. We don't really want you at the center of the family. We want you to kind of orbit. Christ was a lion and a lamb. We do lambs really well because they're safe. We don't like lions. And there's a part of masculinity that has that lion persona.
Yeah, wow, that's a powerful statement. A powerful statement. Number 4 was remember that boys need rules. Now,
Yes.
all the guys here went, oh no, not that one.
Boys are dangerous creatures. For their survival, they need walls to run into, to be blunt. Henry Cloud would say, the wall is the boundary. I'm saying with a boy, it's a wall. Because they need to run into something, go, oh, that is not going to work.
That doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. I can't do that. And in many ways, when they're a teenage boy, they need a man to run into because he may be the only boundary. And that's how they feel safe. Boys need clear boundaries and rules, and they do fine with them. We need to keep our sons safe, physically, emotionally, and so forth. They need rules.
In this case, let's talk about the smartphones around this issue. Have you seen a change of that?
Many teenage boys have difficulty communicating and articulating feelings and thoughts, particularly to girls. This makes it 10 times worse because they're less engaged in healthy conversation and communication. And so the less time boys spend with screens, the healthier they're going to be emotionally. And the relationships are going to be much, much healthier the less time they are on screens. And for boys, a lot of that screen time is video games. We know the more time a boy spends on a violent video game, the more aggressive he becomes. It rewires his brain.
Yeah.
Clearly.
In the book, Boys Should Be Boys, you mentioned George. I'm sure it's a different name for this person, but this college, I don't know if he's college age or younger, who had an addiction to gaming. Describe George's plight and what needed to be done.
And it's not, sad to say, it's not that unusual.
Correct.
This is a boy that started gaming, liked it, an hour to it. And I want to say very well-educated, conscientious, good parents. Friends of mine, okay? Sure. Started an hour to a day, and then he was doing more, and he was doing more in the middle of the night. And this is what parents need to realize. No devices in the room after a kid goes to bed because they'll sit up at 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And this kid just sort of slid into a gaming addiction unbeknownst to his parents. They started to realize that when he wanted to drop out of basketball, and then he let his girlfriend go, he withdrew from his friends because he was spending upwards of 12 hours a day gaming. Good kid. And he knew when he came to see me, he had a problem. There was an addiction. It had power over him.
Yeah.
Because no one saw what was happening. And this is the destructive behavior a teenage boy can just slide into if his parents aren't really paying attention to what he's doing at 3 a.m. We got to know that. And to know how to stop it and to know that they have the right, the duty to stop it early on.
Yeah, that's good. Secret number 5, acknowledge that virtue is not just for girls. Okay, let's spend a little time in this space. How can parents and mentors help train a boy's mind to be inclined toward virtue?
Well, to talk to them about virtue, to talk to them about chivalry, to talk to them about courage and what courage looks like. That courage looks like being afraid you're going to fail, but you step into it anyway. You're scared of algebra, you're going to fall, you're going to take march in there and risk failing because you're a risk taker. You can risk to fail. So talk about, virtues and spell them out, name them. Perseverance and tenacity and even the fruits of the Spirit. Start there and say, this is what, do you aspire to be this way? Yes, I would like to. Well, how are we going to get you there?
Yeah.
It's a we thing because by the time you're 25, I would like these virtues that you have to be solid. I would like you to be a courageous 25-year-old man who's not afraid to walk into a boardroom or to walk, to your kids or whatever. Is that the kind of person you'd like to be? Yes, Mom. Let's talk about grooming you to get there. If you want to get there, you cannot spend 12 hours a day on a video game. You cannot be having sex with a gazillion girls in college. You cannot be playing beer pong every night of the week in college. If you want to be a successful, strong, courageous man.
Yeah.
which every boy will say he wants to be that. Well, you're not going to get there if you're doing this at 18.
Yeah.
And I'm not passing judgment on parents or this boy or anything. Like I said, it was great. It fell into him because our culture sucks him in like it sucks boys into pornography. It comes to them.
Yeah. Meg, you write in the book that God makes sense to boys. I love that statement. I mean, I have poured my parenting time into my two boys in that way. I believe they have a firm grip on that. They don't always behave the way I want them to behave. But I mean, generally they get this. Yeah. It's like, yeah, God does make sense to me. So I think I can attest to that statement, but explain to me why you said that.
Well, here's what I see. Just having watched a generation of kids grow up. Kids are born with a sense that there is another world. They're spiritual people. They're
something bigger.
Something bigger. They're open to it. They want to hear about it. They want to see it. They want to talk about it. But I believe, and even Christian parents, is we talk our kids out of God the older they get. Because we feel we need to defend it all the time. And if kids see you constantly defending something, then they say, well, maybe it's not real, or maybe you think it's not real. Case in point. I have had a number of children, young children, under 10, describe angels to me. I'm not kidding you. And I have the best job in the world. And I sit there, and one girl recently, she's about 11, describing how she's having a hard time falling asleep at night. And I went through sleep hygiene and da-da-da-da. She said, well, I finally got better because I noticed when I would look at my door and the lights were, and it was dark in the room, an angel would stand in the doorway between my room and the hall. And immediately her mother said, what are you talking about? Don't do that. I said, no, please let her talk. I want to know what she saw.
No kidding.
Yeah. So she describes it. Kids have described that to me. They don't just say that to me when they're 18. When they're 5, they will talk to you about God and what he looks like. They will draw pictures of God. It's natural to them. The sense that God is real is natural. It feels good. They want to pray. Ask a little 5-year-old if they want to pray. Oh, they'll go on and on and on, or they'll let you go on and on and on. And also, as a physician, I had to find studies that showed that believing in God helped you get through school. It kept you away from sex, drugs, and alcohol. It helped your marriage be better. And so I thought, God is good for you. So even parents who don't want to believe in God, perhaps they'll believe the research on God and how good he is for their kids. Your kid is likely to do better in school if he has a strong faith.
Yeah.
Period. So if you don't want to believe me that God is real and that he loves you and your kid's like mad, at least look to the research. But kids get it. We train kids out of a belief in God.
Boy, that's sad, actually.
It's very sad. And Christian parents do that as well. And I've seen it because either they get legalistic or they teach their kids to behave in a certain way when the kids aren't ready, or they want their kids to evangelize in the 9th grade. And kids, we make it too complicated for kids.
Oh, it's so true. You mentioned a moment ago just about teaching boys about the fruit of the Spirit, and one of the things with the Beatitudes, of course, we've read those with the boys over and over again. And I remember Trent not long ago, probably a year or two ago, said, I did a word study on that, the meek one, because he's lifting weights. He's a big guy. He's like 6'7". He's big.
Big.
And he said, Dad, that meek statement, it's not being weak. He said meek, it's having the strength to get the job done, but restraining yourself to put it all in the order of God. I was like, wow. So it's not like, just lay yourself down. It says, I can take care of business, but I'm going to choose God's way of intervening and controlling this situation. That's very masculine.
It's controlled power.
Yeah, you've got the power to sort this out.
You have the power. You see the power. You appreciate it and embrace it. But you control it.
I appreciate that. I think that it doesn't make sense the other way, actually, that, just be a doormat.
No.
I mean, again, that connects with men and women.
If you have no power, what is there to control? And see, that's what we're trying to take away from men. Yes, we want abuse to go away. We want cruelty of men towards women to go away. That's not power. That's mental illness. Okay. But when we talk about true, good, masculine power, we're talking about inordinate strength that is well controlled. And that, to me, is the epitome of masculinity. Look at Jesus on the cross.
Yeah.
He could have jumped down in a minute.
Let me ask, as we're winding into the end here, how does a father's faith and a mother's faith shape their son's faith?
Well, first of all, we know that boys are more likely to continue on an adult faith if their father had a faith when he was growing up.
Huh, that's good.
Yeah, because they look up to the authority in their dad, and they believe if dad believed in God and taught me about him, then God is really, really, really real. Two of the best things any good dad can do to a son: make sure you grow your son's faith, take him to church, teach him about God, share your experiences, and be present in his life. If you only do those two things, your kid's not going to go wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's
assuring.
That's a
you
promise.
Don't worry about all the other stuff. Those two things, you've got it.
Yeah. Let's end with number 7, which is to remember that the most important person in your son's life is you as a mom or a dad. Mm-hmm. Let's describe that,
Sure.
that influence. I remember seeing a survey, Meg, a while back, but it said, this was of teenagers, that their parents, it was like 60% or higher, 60 or 70% said their number one influence in their life was still their parents, mm-hmm. which most of us would, really? It's not their friend group, it's not their social media group. But the fact that they said it was their parents is a little bit jaw-dropping. You
think about your typical 30, 35-year-old person who's struggling and goes into counseling. What do they start talking about first? Their relationship with their mom or their dad. It isn't, well, I had a coach who was mean to me, or my best friend when I was in 7th grade did this. It's all about that primal attachment to a mother and a father is so deep and so God-given. That it shapes the identity of a kid because they need that parent. They don't need a coach. They don't need a teacher. I mean, in a different way, but it's that attachment to the parent. It's through a mother and father where the child gets their identity, their value, their sense that they're loved. How many 50, 60-year-old men do you know are still trying to prove their worth to their dad? My dad would love it that I've made this amount of money. My dad. So we know as adults, it's our parents who really wounded us, but who also shaped us into who shaped the greatness in us, mm-hmm. really. But parents have a hard time believing that because we haven't been trained to think that way. We've been trained to think that when teenagers are teenagers, it's all about peers. So back off, because what teenagers really need is a good set of peers. Yeah, they need a good set of peers, but they need a good, strong parent. And sadly, we have trained fathers to buy into that lie, and that's why so many have disappeared from their kids' lives. I think that a lot of men who are in prison feel like throwaways. They feel they're throwaways.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted them. Nobody needed them. Even their kids didn't need their dad. All their kids needed was them to show up, and mom would take it from there.
And a truism is many of them didn't have a dad.
They didn't have a dad. And any man who grew up, or woman who didn't have a dad, they'll just spill it. They won't be able to articulate how painful and why it was painful. They'll just tell it to you. When I interviewed a lot of women for my father-daughter book, women always had one of two responses. They either gushed about their dad or they broke down in tears.
Yeah.
When it comes to your dad, there's no middle ground.
Interesting.
No middle ground. With your mom, you love her and you hate her and this. When it comes to your dad, it's just different. If you had a great dad, you succeed. If your dad wasn't there, you're not sure if you can succeed. Very true for a boy. And also, that's where a man gets a sense of what masculinity is all about. It's through his dad. Yeah,
that's good. You recount a story about counseling a father who was having difficulty communicating with his son. That would, like every dad would put his hand up, oh, that must be me. But they kept repeating kind of the same things this dad did that he was fathered like. And sometimes that's hard because our dad was not a good father.
Right.
And we repeat those mistakes. How did that story end?
unless a dad recognizes that his behavior came because he was taught it from his childhood by his own dad, he can't disrupt the behavior and change.
Yeah.
If a dad was yelled at and he grows up and starts yelling at his son, he'll never be able to stop yelling at his son unless he recognizes he learned it when he was a kid, and he's got to stop. Because the patterns are so ingrained, we repeat what we know. Yeah. We don't do what we want, we repeat what we know. And so in a situation like that, I'm not communicating to my son because I was never shown how to communicate. Yeah. So let's figure this out. So, son, I'm not communicating with you well because I didn't ever learn how to do it. So let's start fresh. How do you need me to communicate with you? Help me out here. Or, son, I'm so sorry I'm yelling at you. I don't know any different. I'm going to really work hard on this. Can you help me stop yelling at you? You say that to a kid, you've won him over.
Yeah. Meg, for both the mom and the dad, one of the great guilts that we carry can be that our boys aren't performing. They're just not hitting the standard. They're not hitting the mark. And you could pick the age. Doesn't matter whether they're teens or 20s. Speak to that idea of grace. The longer I live, the more the analogy of God's character toward us is like a father. I mean, he is our creator. He is our Abba Father, the scripture says, to refer to him as daddy. I mean, that's pretty amazing. But to bring that down to earth, so to speak, how do we do that with our own children, particularly our boys, as we're talking about boys today? But how do we emulate the grace of God toward that prodigal child?
I think it's a great question. I learned this through a friend, actually, who had a son who got a girl pregnant at 16. And she was beside herself. I failed. This kid's been brought up in the church. He loves Christ. What has happened? And she said she's walking along the beach, and she was quiet. And all of a sudden, she didn't hear a voice, but she heard God sort of speak to her in her spirit. Now, wait a minute. I'm the perfect father. And look at my kids. And so you can be a perfect parent, and you can have a 16-year-old who's going off the rails.
Right.
Because God is a perfect parent, but that's the free will. But again, even if he's going off at the rails at 16, you've still got 9 years left to get him to 25. It's not always about you. God's in there too, and kids have free will, and they have different personalities. They have very different, and we know that. There's a whole lot of nature in there too, and we do the best we can, and that's good enough.
And I think at the end here, Meg, you and I both have heard this over and over again. The things that we talk about here at Focus on the Family, it's not a formula. These are prescriptive suggestions, recommendations. If you do these things, there is a higher potential of success, not a guarantee. And so because people have free will, your children have free will. We have free will before the Lord. So in that context, we can only do the right things and then trust God.
Absolutely.
That will sink in at some point.
Absolutely.
And not to over-own it.
No, don't over-own it. I have another friend who adopted a very, very high-need daughter, and the daughter died of a drug overdose at 22. And I failed. I said, wait a minute. If you hadn't adopted her when she was 6, she probably would have died at 14. And she knew the Lord when she died at 22. You succeeded.
Heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. But we are here to steward these kids. I would also encourage parents, keep it simple.
I like that.
Give them enough attention. Give them some affection. Affirm them before God. Give them a faith. And it's going to be okay, because what your kids want is your attention and your love and your time. And they want you to listen to them.
Yeah. I like that.
It's
Parenting isn't algebra.
No,
it's
and you don't have to have a PhD.
Addition and subtraction.
But we think it's algebra because there's so much out there on the internet. There's so much pop psychology and so much parenting advice that's so overcomplicated, and a lot of it's just bad anyway. But just really keep it simple and trust your instincts, because God will show you if you're really have some humility and it's really not rocket science.
Yeah.
But it feels like it because we just want to get it right.
So good. Dr. Meg Meeker, this has been great. Your book, Boys Should Be Boys, 7 Secrets to Raising Healthy Sons. I so appreciate the content. Thank you for writing it, number one.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here, number 2.
You bet. It's always a pleasure, and thank you for what you do as well.
So good. And we want to get this into your hands as a parent, as a grandparent to give to your adult children. This is wonderful guidelines and, again, prescriptions on how to help build your sons into becoming men. And, 7 things. I think you can grab those and run with them. Mm-hmm. And if you can support the ministry monthly, that's great. A one-time gift is good. If you can do either, we'll send you a copy of Meg's book as our way of saying thank you for being part of the ministry and helping other families to be stronger in Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, support this show and the general ministry of Focus on the Family when you call today and make a generous donation. Our number is 800, the letter A in the word family. You can also donate and request Meg's book, Boys Should Be Boys. When you stop by the program description, the link is right there for you. And thanks for joining us today for Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back next time as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.